Good afternoon, everyone. It is 1:01 p.m. on Saturday, March 5th, and this is another of Western Liberty Network's Saturday afternoon trainings. We do them every Saturday with very few exceptions at 1 o'clock, and you can get to it by going to the westernlibertynetwork.org website and scrolling down until you see the featured training advertised, and you can click on the red button, Join Zoom Now, and that is how you get into the calls live. These are also recorded, so folks may be watching this on the recording as well. I encourage everyone on the call live to mute their microphones, but if they want to speak or ask questions during the presentation, feel free to unmute yourself, ask your question or issue your comment, and then when you're finished, remute yourself again. I like to have interactive things. I'm not a wait to the end for questions kind of guy, so feel free to jump in, and with a group of this size, it's perfect for interaction. So what I'm going to do is first share my screen. And what I will show you is Western Liberty Network's website. This is our homepage. When you type westernlibertynetwork.org, you will be redirected to this page. And this shows you what's going on. We have a conference coming up in Klamath Falls on March 26th. This tells you about that information. You can download a flyer here, and you can buy a ticket here. We've got a really good sponsor for this, so tickets are only $39, and it's the Running Y Resort, which is a really awesome, beautiful place, and they've got a nice group rate for us for hotel rooms. Different prices for different kinds of rooms, but if you're interested in learning something new, this is a great opportunity to do it. I will click on the flyer. If you click on the flyer, this is what you get, and this features some of the training we're going to be doing, using social media, how to canvass your neighborhood, how to testify in front of public boards, organizing around local issues, the components of a good campaign plan, and making social media a part of your campaign. And Senator Dennis Linthicum will also be talking to us. So it's a good presentation. We've got a great buffet lunch, all of that for $39. So check that out. Scroll a little farther down, and this is where you'll see our Saturday Zoom training featured. This is the button that you'll use to get on with. All of you live know that, but those watching the recording, that's how you do it. And then scrolling down, you see previous events and speeches at those events. You can play at your convenience. Information about previous training, other presentations. This is really a lot of good resources here. If you want more training resources, go to the training tab. If you go to the training tab, you'll see this. 3 sections. The first section tells about the kind of trainings we provide. The second one are documents you can download that provide training on various topics. And scroll down a little farther, and you'll see the Saturday training sessions like this one that have been posted, and this one will be posted a couple of hours after the training is over today. So a lot of resources available, over a year worth of videos. So there's a lot of good information here, and all of this is available for free. If you like what you see and want to help us with a tax-deductible contribution to keep the lights on, go to Support WLN tab. You will see this. You can make one-time contributions, or you can make automatic monthly contributions. Everything is handled securely through PayPal. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen right now, come back here, and point out that Western Liberty Network is a 501c3 organization. As such, we do not oppose or endorse any candidates, even the ones we train. No political parties, no legislation or ballot measures. We just train grassroots activists how to do politics. And then, of course, once they receive the training, trainees can use the training in any way that they see fit. So before I go on, are there any questions? Okay, I see some shaking heads. No questions, so we're going to go on with the training today. It's going to be a pretty brief training, provide some basics, and I've got some good information to provide you with. This training is about building coalitions. If you are in a group or an individual wanting to combine with other people, coalitions are a way that you can increase the amount of reach that you have, increase your access to various resources, leverage the contacts you have to get something done. And there are a few pitfalls, but a lot of good things about coalitions. And I'm going to upload in the chat window to everyone 4 files that I found. These are really good files. They're PDF files. And these documents are produced by other organizations on how to form coalitions, steps to build coalitions. There's a toolbox of tips that will be helpful to you, things to avoid. Here's 8 steps to coalition building. And this one is a summary version of the same file. A little bit easier read. Okay, I've got to get back. Got to get back to the right screen to send these other files. I've got 2 more. I'm having a little bit of dyslexia here, it looks like. Community toolkit. And that's it. I guess there are only 3 files. So after the training is over, if you want to take a look at these 3 files, I've made them available through the chat window. These are built, these are other organizations. Some of them are liberal organizations, some of them are sort of neutral, but they provide really good tools on building coalition that you can use after the training here today. Now, if you're going to build a coalition, the first thing that I advise people to do is ask yourself why. What are the goals of the coalition? Goals of a coalition can be a singular project, like you want to build a coalition to defeat a specific bill, or to pass a specific bill, or to get signatures to put something on the ballot, whatever it is. Maybe it's a coalition to do something ongoing. For example, Western Liberty Network is a member of the Oregon Liberty Coalition, and we are an ongoing coalition that works to improve liberty and empower grassroots activists to expand liberty in our country and in their communities. So you might have a specific reason, or you might have sort of a general ongoing reason, but make sure that you have specific, clear goals. Why am I looking at building a coalition? Or why am I looking at joining a coalition? What are their goals? See if they match with your goals. It's important to know what you're organizing for, not just as a concept in general terms, but specifically, what is it that you want to do? And then decide who you want to be in this coalition. It's important that, at least in the beginning, you have a small group. Keep it very small. Keep the number of decision makers low. The more people you get representing more organizations in a coalition, the harder it is going to be to make decisions, because everyone coming to a coalition has a different mission. They have a different goal. And you'll find that you're aligned on a number of things, but sometimes what you want to do to move the ball forward could be counterproductive to another organization's goals in another respect. For example, I introduced a bill in the Oregon legislature that would amend the Constitution, which would require a vote of the people, to create an explicit right of privacy. We have no explicit right of privacy in the Oregon Constitution. Montana has one. A couple of other states have one. But there were some conservatives who were afraid that while they supported privacy for things like medical records and internet, they were afraid that this could be used to promote abortion rights. I don't think that's true, but they had that fear. And so they were members of our coalition, but they were afraid that some of the coalition's goals were against some of their other goals. And so because of that non-alignment, the coalition fell apart. And so it's important to make sure that all the members of your coalition are in good alignment with your goals and the methods that you need to pursue to achieve those goals. And if they're not aligned, they're probably not a good choice to be in your coalition. Also, it's important to remember that the more people you bring into your coalition, the more consensus you're going to have to build to do anything significant. And so it's going to be hard to move. So make sure that you have a small number of people in your coalition to begin with. And once you have a few members, whether it's 3, 5, 7, or whatever you decide to do that are in your coalition representing different groups or influential individuals, you need to adopt some set of rules. I like to use a set of bylaws. I've worked with Lauren Christensen on the issue of bylaws, and maybe you'll want to chat about that later for the Young Republicans. They had no bylaws, now they do. And bylaws are very helpful because are you going to expand the coalition? Who gets to be a member? What are the membership criteria to be a part of your coalition? How will decisions be made? Will it be majority rule? Will it be 2/3? Will it be a general consensus? And how do you make decisions? Is it done in a meeting? How often are meetings happening? Who's in charge? Who's the spokesperson for the coalition? All of these things are rules, or not rules, but they're aspects of running the coalition on an ongoing basis that require structure. Otherwise, everyone's just saying, well, who are you to make this decision? Well, who do I have to be? I'm the chair. Well, where does the chair give you, being the chair, give you the right to make that decision? I want to say too. And if you have no rules, you have no chain of command, you have no lines of authority, you have no lines of responsibility. You don't know who's entitled to be a member, who's not entitled to be a member, how you get them in as a member, how you kick them out as a member. And without some sort of rules, it seems arbitrary, and it usually becomes very arbitrary. So it's important to have a set of bylaws. We have a set of basic bylaws that can be used, and the Young Republicans have used it and edited it to fit their specific requirements that provide some of that structure. Now, when you're building a coalition, you should take a good look at what your goals are, who is in it to begin with, what the rules are of the coalition, how things are done, and decide if it strengthens coalition members. A good coalition will strengthen coalition members. Sometimes they weaken coalition members, especially if you have more than one group that does the same thing, that fights over turf. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit. It's also important to know key individuals. You're going to need individuals who are good at specific things. You need to identify them across the organizations that are in your coalition. Who is good at running a meeting? Who is good at raising money? Who is good at database work? Who is good at social media? Who is good at building consensus? All of these things. Find out who the individuals are. There are going to be some pitfalls that you have. Whenever you build a coalition, you're going to be dealing with issues of turf. I remember when I did the coalition to have a constitutional right of individual privacy, there were a lot of liberal organizations that were inclined to agree with that. These were organizations that supported privacy on the internet, for example, but they were offended that they were not brought in, or that it was their turf, or that their organization specialized in lobbying the legislature. If you deal with individuals who are leaders, you're going to have egos. If you deal with organizations that specialize in doing a certain kind of work in a certain way, whether it be social media or legislative contact or building protests in the street, whatever it is, they're going to regard that as their shtick, their turf. And you want to make sure that you do not bring them into the coalition and then have their thunder stolen by another member of the coalition. That is a good way to create faction and to create conflict on your board. And then you have all kinds of deals. We want to be the one that has this job. No, we want to be the one that has that job. Well, then they start lobbying other votes on the commission board, and they start making deals. Well, I want this if you want that. And then you start to get tangled up in a web of these sorts of things, and that can kill a coalition really quick. So it's important that your bylaws have clauses in them that provide ways to resolve conflict between organizations that maybe have the same mission, or when something that the coalition does works against one of the purposes of a coalition member. These are just, things you have to look out for. If you're going to be in a coalition, ask yourself some questions. What do you bring to the table that the coalition doesn't already have? If you can answer that question with clarity, we have members, we have money, we have specific skills that they don't have. What do you bring to the coalition that they don't already have? If you can answer that question clearly, then you are likely to become an influential member of this coalition. If you cannot answer that question clearly, or there's an organization that duplicates what you're doing, it may not be for you. On one hand, if the coalition you're thinking of joining is a real go-getter and they're making a lot of progress, you might want to be associated with that, but don't expect you're going to be in a leadership position if another organization is doing what you do and they're already in the coalition. If you do it better than the other organization, get ready for a fight, because there's going to be turf, and you're going to have to deal with the diplomacy of combining forces with this other organization that does the same thing that you do well, and dealing with the individuals and egos that are there. Ronald Reagan had a great quote. It's famous. Most of you have probably heard it. It says, "You can get a lot accomplished if you don't care who gets the credit." And that's the truth. If you don't care who gets the credit, if you're willing to let somebody else, take the glory, you can save yourself a lot of grief, especially if to you the main idea is to move the ball forward and not necessarily to get all of the publicity or all of the glory. When you're in a coalition, you've always got somebody that wants to steal the thunder. You've always got somebody that wants the press, somebody that wants to be the one that's interviewed on the radio, interviewed on TV. I usually am very yielding about those sorts of things as long as the ball is getting moved forward. In the long run, people know who provides the smoke and people who know who provides the fire. And if you're the one that provides the fire and not the smoke, over time, people are going to recognize that. But you can get a lot done if you have somebody that does the same thing you do and they're threatened. Be yielding. Let them take the responsibility for something, or support them, or do whatever you can to move the ball forward. But always make sure that the contributions you make are contributions of substance, not a lot of blather, not a lot of promises and rhetoric. Make sure you do the work. If you do, you'll be absolutely indispensable. So ask yourself, what do I bring to the coalition, or what does my organization bring to the coalition? Another good question to ask yourself is, what does the coalition do for me or my organization? That's a reasonable question. If you have an organization, you've got members, you've got supporters, you've got donors, and you have to do right by them. And you need to justify to them why joining a specific coalition is good for the organization and leverages their investment. Sometimes it can be, well, the members of the coalition have skills that our organization doesn't have yet. Or by joining this coalition, we'll have access to funding to do our part. Or we will have access to email lists, or at least we'll be able to pass on our communication to people who will in turn pass it on to their email lists. So we will increase our reach. In other words, be able to answer specifically with clarity what it is you or your organization is getting out of coalition membership, whatever it is. Once you are in a coalition and you have a voice, one thing I always invite people to do is, before you take on a project, have a business plan for that project. Just like you need a business plan to go into a bank and ask for financing, so that the bank can see the path to getting their money back and being able to collect interest and, you know, your business's ability to make a profit. Just as a business has to have a business plan to avoid getting laughed out of the bank, and just as a candidate running for public office asking for donations needs to have a campaign plan to show donors and important activists what the path to victory is, or at least the path to achieving secondary objectives, your organization and your coalition needs to have a plan for every project it plans to undertake. What is the objective of the plan? How is the coalition going to move toward that objective? What are the responsibilities of every member of the coalition going to be in order to implement this plan and achieve this objective? That's really key, because that helps members of the coalition from stepping on each other's turf and from stepping on each other's egos, because they'll all know what their specific job is. And it'll be easy to tell if someone's crossing the line into somebody else's responsibility. The plan should have a backup. What if a member of the coalition fails? Who's going to pick up the ball and do their part of the work? Where's the money going to come from? Who's going to raise the money? What's going to be the pitch? All of these things are a part of the plan. What will the path to victory be? Sometimes polling will be helpful in providing that. Sometimes it won't be necessary. What are the resources that the coalition has to work with? All of these things should be part of a plan to achieve some kind of objective, leveraging the coalition's resources to execute the plan and achieve the objective. And what is each individual and organization's role is going to be to do that. This is important. You know, there's a lot of common sense into this, but it really isn't that complicated if you break it down to the basics. And what I've provided you with here are some basics that will get you started. And the documents that I've sent you on the email will provide a lot more in-depth information on all of those components. A couple of the documents are made by liberal organizations. Try to look past that and only focus on the methods, because the methods are sound. And by reading these documents and heeding the basic tips that I've provided you in this training, you will do a lot better when it comes to forming coalitions, joining coalitions, and being able to be effective when functioning as a coalition. Oh, we lost Lauren, but now we got her back. Okay, great, very good. So that is the substance of my training. It's a pretty short training. Are there any questions anybody has? Go ahead, Lauren.
Oh, I think it got answered, so never mind. Yeah.
You know, Lauren, I'm glad you're on, because I'd like you to talk about, you're one of the Young Republicans, or one of the organizations that adopted a set of bylaws when it didn't have one before. Could you talk a little bit about how you adopted those bylaws and what they have done for your organization, both good and bad?
Yeah, the bylaws, it was really nice to have a set of bylaws that Richard Burke provided, and we went through it section by section and said, either like we discussed whether we wanted to change that section or discard it or change the wording. And so the bylaws help us figure out who can join our organization. Like if some young person that isn't a Republican per se, but is in the conservative realm, our bylaws say that that person can come in. So it helps explain, like, you don't have to just be a Republican. And so it clearly defines who can join, and it helps with our job descriptions. There was some confusion about, like, the chair's responsibilities, and we were able to look in the bylaws and iron that detail out. And it was very clear. And one of the pitfalls, I would say, is we didn't put in a forgot what it's called, like the judicial committee. So if
A conflict resolution mechanism.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So when there was some conflict, there wasn't really a non or what's it called, like non-biased way to come to a agreement, or like a decision, I guess. So that was one mistake that hopefully will be put in the bylaws in our next annual meeting. So yeah, they're very helpful in making sure that everyone knows where they stand.
Just by way of providing credit where credit is due, the bylaws that we have it's a sample set of bylaws. I didn't write them. I tweaked them a little bit, but they were primarily written by two people, Robert Balch, who is actually a member, or excuse me, one of the actual authors of Robert's Rules of Order. If you go to the store and buy it, he's actually one of the authors, and M. Carling, who I've worked with on a number of occasions. He's a professional registered parliamentarian, and he is paid to run meetings using parliamentary procedure. And the two of them came up with the major points of these bylaws over dinner in Paris and said that I could use the information. And so this is where most of it came from. So I just wanted to make sure that no one was left with the impression that I wrote these bylaws myself. And again, if you don't care who gets the credit, you can get a lot done. So the credit goes to them. And to you, Lauren, for bringing this to your group. And I'm glad that it's been helpful. Just by way of explanation, the sample bylaws do have a conflict resolution mechanism included called the Judicial Committee. Some people don't see the need for it right away, but you've crashed right into that. And it sounds like
Yeah.
you're putting that back in at your next.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
having a good set of rules to operate by so that everyone knows what their rights are, everyone knows what their responsibilities are, everyone knows who's accountable to who, and everyone knows how the resources flow and all of that. That's key to building a coalition. Are there any other questions or comments before we call it a day? Okay, well, looks like we got in at 30 minutes today. It's a pretty brief session, and I hope that there was enough information to chew on in this training. This is the kind of thing you could do a whole weekend seminar on if you wanted to, but this provides you with some highlights, and the documents offer some resources and additional explanations that you can look at. So I encourage you to look at it, and I encourage you to join us next week when we will have another Saturday training. So thank you, and God bless, and have a great weekend. Bye.